wow, we're doing this. I can't believe it. But thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I think first thing is thank you for your commitment. I think everybody can feel your commitment to Africa, right? Please just give them. Please, so if you have questions, get it across. But my first question is, where does that commitment come from? I think I know, but I want everybody to know. Because you could be doing anything you wanted to do, all three of you, right? I've gone through my own journey, right? But where does that commitment come from? Like, why are you doing this?
When I was 50, I lost my passion to be an investment banker. I wanted it back so bad, I made a deal with Jesus. I said, I'll be anything you want. I'll go anywhere you want. I am available to you if you just give me my passion back.
Wow.
And this is where he led me.
Wow.
So I'm the worst Christian on the planet. No, really, I think I am. But it's not about me. That's a testament to his willingness and his ability to work in ways I would have never seen, never foreseen. And I didn't design it. I didn't go to Africa looking to help. I just went kind of out of curiosity. And I ran into rubies everywhere, and God just lit that up. And I became unbelievably, I love the fact that people move out of love. I moved out of anger. You know, I was full of enmity. And somebody told me, I said, I'm just pissed off. And he said, oh, that's enmity. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, enmity is actually the anger that comes about when you see injustice done and you were moved to actually do something about it. And I said, okay, I experienced enmity, but it just looks like fighting to me, and I love it.
Okay, so Jesus.
Okay.
It is a calling. I spent my whole career helping feed people. We like to talk about making great food and making a difference. And today, I'm still doing that, making great food and making a difference. Yeah. And I think God gives us a chance. Howard Buffett wrote a great book called 40 Chances. Basically, the premise of the book is we work for about 40 years. So God gives us about 40 chances to make an impact. And while I thoroughly enjoyed the impact that I was blessed to be involved with during my corporate career, now changing the lane, not really a little bit maybe the activity, but changing the lane and going to Africa and helping the poorest of the poor help themselves. That's just a great way to spend your life.
So I'm going to share a little personal story, and I really want you to speak to people here. I feel like the world lies to us about corporate life. So here's my own turning point. 3 years ago, so I was one of those people that came to study in America and never went back, okay? So I was here, I came from graduate school in Michigan, spent 10 years, a decade, never went back, but stayed connected, and then my dad passed. I had to make an emergency trip. But I felt like I was lucky because what I then realized was his memories and his legacy wasn't about the corporate life. He rose through the ranks. But what people had to say about his impact were little ways he touched lives. And then I was like, oh, I thought chasing the American dream was it. I'm glad I'm still young, right? I'm still one of those people that would make a difference, hopefully we are. But can you share looking across the room, we're not that young, but there's a good chunk of energy in the room. Please speak you've been to the top, right? You've risen through the ranks. So Scott didn't share this, but Scott led Altel, and he sold Altel to Verizon for like $27 billion.
29 and a half, which is $3 billion more than Sprint got 15 years later.
So,
Not that you're competitive.
so I think this is so important. We're having business leaders that have been to the top. Like whatever I could have aspired to become within corporate America, they've all gotten there. And they got there and they realized, oh, wait a minute, impact. So please speak to this. Each of you, please just share that, encourage them, I don't know who's going through that turning point, and just tell them the joy of what you're doing, the risk aspect, but very rewarding.
When I grew up, my grandfather was a West Texas cowboy and a Pentecostal minister. My dad was a milkman and a small entrepreneur. And when I went to the University of Texas, I thought I needed to make a decision. I could be one or I could be the other, and I chose to be a business guy. And I never looked back. I had an incredible career, had a great fun time. I was 50 years old before I saw anything about world poverty and learned that most people in the world don't ever have a job. They have to be an entrepreneur. They have to be a business person. And that by building a bank, a commercial microfinance bank, I could actually, which is something I could figure out how to do, I'd actually be transforming the lives of other people. And I tell all young people that I work with today that I made a terrible mistake to think that I had to choose between a life committed to my faith and helping other people versus a life built on a corporate professional achievement. It wasn't that one was wrong and one was bad. The point was they weren't mutually exclusive. Is that I could have done both, and that nobody that's 25 years old should give up doing both for the rest of their life.
That's a great word. I think that's a fantastic word because we've never taken a dime out of Rwanda, but we run it as a for-profit business because I want everybody that touches the business, including my young recent Bridge to Rwanda scholars who are going to end up running it someday. I want them to know what does that mean. I don't want them resting on someone, if we get in trouble, will give us money. No, sir. No, ma'am. You make it on your own or you lose it. Right? So that mindset, I think, is actually beneficial. I've talked to you in my talk about my personal connection to it. Here's the point I would say to those of you who are in a position to influence in Africa. I'm always on message. It's what people love and hate about me. Zero corruption, the equal deployment of the rule of law, tax and regulatory policy that encourages investment. Look, we can't do that for you. You have to do that. There's more money looking to come into Africa than you can shake a stick at. Everybody says, well, there's no money. There's plenty of money. There's not many places that as an American who has to comply with Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, I can go. So everybody says, it sounded like a Rwandan love fest up here. Wonder why that is, right? It's because zero corruption, equal deployment of the rule of law, tax and regulatory policy that attracts capital. You get that right, wherever you're from, money will come to your country. You get that wrong, no amount of moaning is going to fix a thing.
Enough said. I think God has a purpose and plan for every life. Okay, I don't think I am any more in the will of God today, serving the poorest in Africa by starting businesses, as I was when I was the feed mill manager in Tracy City, Tennessee. I think all of that was a plan. And I think God is awesome, and I think he's really good at his job, and he's in control, and he's directing my path, and I don't know what's next. But it'll be great, and I'm all in.
Right. So we do have, okay, I'll ask one question then. We do have policy leaders in the room. And like I said, I get a feel that they mean well. But where can they go to? Like what you just shared, people have told me what you shared about, zero corruption, that they've not heard that before out loud. Because we have personal conversations and investors tell me behind, we need to be more direct like that, right?
So let me tell you what it cost. So the night we had the conversation with President Kagame about these three things, I was Jack Stevens' assistant for 10 years. I got to hang out with people like Warren Buffett and the smartest people in the world. Paul Kagame is in the group of the 3 or 4 smartest people I've ever met. He knew what I was saying. He wasn't shocked by what I said. But what he had to take an account of was whether he was willing to pay the price to deliver it. He had to count the cost before he made the commitment. And guys like us, we're like the tea in the bottom of the glass. We can only go where political leaders count the cost, make the decision, and go all in. We can't go elsewhere.
Wow. Wow. I don't know what, do you want to add to that? Okay. So, because, I mean, we need such leaders. So when you go back, we need to be such leaders. That's first. We start with ourselves. And then how do we spread that? You know, that's going to be my walk away from this conference is if what's holding us back is not having that, then we have to think about what of the generations to come. I think we have to get to a point where we're willing to fight. If you want to fight, like the spirit and your commitment, I'm questioning, like, am I that commitment? I'm committed to Africa as 3 of you. I think everybody in this room should ask themselves that question. Are you as committed? Right? Because if you are, maybe that's the beginning of transformation for not just Rwanda, but for the rest of the continent. That's my own lesson. I'm taking that, I'm packaging that, and I'm going to chew on that for a couple of months. So, questions? Okay, I'm going to hold, he was the first.
All right, thanks for the opportunity, to ask this question. It's actually 3 in 1. So my first is very short. So first question is, it seems you're doing some very good work in Rwanda, right? Are you interested in expanding, or have you done similar work in other parts of Africa? Or are you interested in partnering with people who are interested in, doing some of what you're doing in Rwanda? That's the first question.
We only own the mill in Rwanda. We once owned a mill in another country there. They changed the rules. But we export for other people, local families and local businesses that run wet mills and dry mills. We're probably the largest exporter of fully washed specialty Arabica out of Ethiopia. We're the largest out of Uganda. We were in another country or two. We kick-started this program where Starbucks is buying coffee from the DRC. That was our team that went in and built those wet mills and put up the initial finance. We do all this. I love his fruit grows on other trees. We do all this in the name of whatever business is local. But yes, we will partner if the 3 conditions are true. We will partner anywhere in Africa where there's product that outsiders want.
All right, second quick question is, so I'm blanking out right now. Didn't come without the successes that you've achieved in Rwanda with what you're doing. I believe did not come without any challenges or obstacles. So can you share some of the major obstacles that you've had, to deal with to get to where you've, gotten to?
If you got me talking about it, I would weep. That's how tiring it was. I told you a little bit about the conversation with my wife. That was real. We may lose everything. That's how hard. We had to push. I'd made a lot of money. We had to push it all in before this flywheel turned all the way around. It takes, not millions, it takes tens of millions of dollars to support this infrastructure across the 20 countries that we're in today. All right, we just got profitable in our 9th year of business. Right? So you tell me how many obstacles you want to know about. Send me a note. I could cry you a river.
All right. And for this last question, you probably don't have to answer. Maybe I'll, talk to you on the side about it. But how do I become like one of you, CEO, founder? And the idea being that, it seems it's easier for guys like you to go to Africa, right, and be able to do the things that you're doing. For some Africans themselves, it's not that easy. So what are some of the things that you need to do or prepare yourself for to be in the position that you're in? Thank you.
Look, everything that we have in Africa is run by Africans. So, you know, the general manager of our feed mill is African. The lady that runs all of our QA and our live production business, Rita's from Rwanda. It's African. So, yeah, I think what is needed is capital to start a business, trust, to be able to trust people. I mean, look, I don't know, how far are we from Rwanda? 10,000 miles? 8,000 miles? I got a 28-year-old young man, running a business on assets I paid for 8,000 miles away. That takes a lot of trust, but he's worth it. He's a great investment. He was well educated, and I'd do it all again. And so I think the opportunity's there. I think, Scott's made the point. The capital's available. They're just looking for a safe place to put it with a team that they can trust with a reasonable amount of risk. And if you're that guy that is trustworthy, faithful, intelligent, resourceful, innovative, with good interpersonal skills, why can't you do it?
Being an entrepreneur, building a business anywhere is really, really hard. It's hard in the States. And people come out of school wanting, if somebody would just give me the money, I'd be so successful. Well, people say that in the United States too. So it's the same issues. So find a existing business that you can go to work for and learn the business. Save your money. Start a business on the side. Take risks. Throw yourself into it. I mean, you had to do that in America. You have to do that in Africa. The flip side is you don't have nearly as much competition in Africa. And so part of our role at Bridge to Rwanda is to facilitate as much of that as we possibly can, to find American investors who want to get involved and mentor and coach and own these businesses and put up capital and bring expertise. But it's also to create, a work site where people can come in and kick their ideas around and put them up on whiteboards and get advice and consulting and encouragement. A lot of it's just, you need to be in an environment where people are encouraging you to go for it. And we can create that kind of an environment. But you still got to do it.
Right. So Dale, you and I have had, conversations offline about how Africans can engage the U.S. business community. I talked about Washington, D.C., for a lot of African political leaders. Last 20 years, they've built strong relationships in D.C. Great. One of the things I realized is that the business community or the business leaders on the African continent have not partnered with the U.S. business community. And you've talked about what President Paul Kagame did. Would you be willing to share a little bit about that, please, if you feel comfortable?
Yeah, when Scott and I first met the president, we actually had a great example from this Anglican bishop who just kept coming back and forth and making friends and inviting them back to Rwanda. And effectively, that's what President Kagame and the Rwandan leaders have taught us, is that everything's driven by relationships. Everything. And the president told us early on that he had made the decision and he had been advised, don't spend a lot of time in Washington. You need to go focus on business leaders, university leaders, church leaders. You need to build a network of friends around the world and invite them to come into your country and figure out how to come alongside you and help. We went through a period from about, right after we met the president, there was a 3 or 4 year period where Scott and a number of other friends of Rwanda, it was like a competition to see who could introduce Paul Kagame to the coolest person. And they were CEOs, and they were Rick Warren, and they were presidents. But it was, you never would have thought how significant that was, but it was enormously significant.
Absolutely.
And the network of friends that Rwanda has is one of its great competitive advantages.
Absolutely. And so the conversation we're having here is so important because I'm going to give Albert, I know you have a question. From his data points, right, it's so clear that the trajectory, right? But what people don't know is what did the president do? And that's what you're sharing with us. You're really unveiling what the secret sauce is. And the reason, and thank you for sharing, right? Because I want other countries represented here to take that back, that this is what it takes.
Yeah, so really key on that, and it's not only did he form this Presidential Advisory Council to get information. What did he do that in our eyes, because every piece of information we gave him, we already knew. What did he do in our eyes that changed the dynamic? Twice a year, he was willing to be held accountable by people who were watching the regulatory policies, the law, the tax, the corruption. He was willing to sit in a room twice a year and say, give me all you got that's not going right, and let me go back to work on 6 months, right? That accountability from the head of the country, you know this in a corporation, you know, everybody says, what makes a great CEO? The willingness to hear the bad news and the desire to hear it early. That's it. Everything else in a book is crap. That's it. He was willing to do that. So therefore, guys like us could say, okay, we know how to partner with that.
Thank you.
I've got a follow-up question on that. How can you guys help convince other African governments to see the transformation that you have helped take care of in Rwanda? Is there a way you guys can be maybe the voice for other African leaders to hear?
You're talking to the guy who just took a plant apart and put it in trailers and shipped it out of a country because they won't have the discussion, and they just create a law, say, here's the new law, this governs everything, no industry associating meetings, no process to hear the rules, to hear the impact of the rules, just this is the new rule, comply immediately. I complied by taking a saline torch to the plant, putting it in container ships and driving it to Rwanda. I hope he gets the message. You know, that's all I know to do. All I have is the little bit to decide over we have.
Yeah.
You know,
I also want to, could we get a mic? He raised his hand.
I would also say that we aren't the best people to influence African political leaders.
Wow.
Paul Kagame and the example of Rwanda is what motivates Africans and African leaders. So, you know, you need to underplay the role that we've had here. I mean, we got called into a great opportunity to have a lot of fun and have a lot of purpose and rewards. But everything that's happened in Rwanda is because of the Rwandan leaders and Rwandan people. And they're the model. And it's encouraging to me the fact that, you know, the president, Kagame, became the head of the AU. And they've just been able to make this big, you know, intercontinental trade deal. Is that I don't think he got into this role because people aren't noticing what's going on in Rwanda.
First of all, let me thank you all for this wonderful panel. This is probably the highest commitment to Africa panel I've heard in a long time. And I want to thank Toyin for really treating us to this delight. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I have one question, which is, you know, it's probably God's work to bring all of you together. But I'm sure you're not alone. How can we make sure a network is created around like-minded people like you in the USA, not only not Western Arkansas, but in the USA, to actually take the work you're doing, the fantastic work you're doing, to the next level?
So, that's a great one. If somebody could help me take note of that. David, please, can you help me take note of that? I'm going to say this. I think I've said it in private with you. Dale is the most influential, connected person I know in the world.
Amen. Donnie, I can trust you about it all.
He doesn't say it. He doesn't say it. He's very, like, you know, quiet about it. But I know. I just want you to know I'm watching you. We can do it. We can do it. Behind each of them is wealth of information, experience, but a strong network. Donnie ran the world's first or second largest poultry business in the world. He knows everybody in that business. What I would love to do is, how can we tap into that network and point it in the right country that is ready? We know what's working in Rwanda, but we want to see serious players, serious countries. We have, one of the things I told someone privately, but I'll share it just to encourage people. I said, I don't have a name or a title to my name, right? I'm not Dangote. I don't know. You didn't all have to do this. But I said, if one person can pull this off, any president in Africa can pick up the phone and surely do much more than has been done here. And I also said that Africa has everything it needs available in the world. There's no new innovation or anything you need. Everything is available. This is a small world. This is a small world. Everything a country in Africa needs, the blueprint, the expertise, the willingness, the focus, the funding, everything is abundant. We just need visionary leaders. We need to create a network. And as you've heard them, we need commitment. We need people to commit and invest, and not just for a short time, to be in it for the long haul. And what I'm so grateful you're here because your World Bank, you have a whole lot of network, but I'm saying the stakeholders were not on the same table, and that's why we came together. The work continues after this event, for me at least, and I hope for you all. What's next? How can we partner? And please comment on that, because behind them is a strong network of everything you need in agriculture, everything in my finance, everything in export, import. Because what you've done for coffee, we can just copy that sesame seed, cashew. West Africa produces probably, 30, 40, or maybe even 50% of the cashew in the world, but it's exported raw into Southeast Asia and imported into the US. With AGOA, you process it on-site, bring it into the US, the buyer pays less, all of that.
Yep.
We need to take what you've done and just apply it elsewhere.
I'll be a broken record because it's what I do. There was a kid that lived from a West African country that lived with us during his high school and college years. And he used to say, he had a little bit of a French accent, and he says, Rwanda, 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 it's a tiny country. I'm sick of hearing about it. And I said, I understand. I get it. And he goes, so he vents, and he comes back in a little bit, and he goes, why? Which I thought was a great opportunity to say, it's really three things. It's the rule of law equally applied, zero corruption, and reasonable regulatory policy. And I said, go to your home country. Go see the man at the port. Ask him, if I brought a container of coffee down out of the mountains, could I get it out without bribing him? He said, of course you can. I said, go ask him. He comes back, you cannot. Knew him, right? He said, you cannot. And I said, right, I have to comply with FCPA everywhere we go. We have to train everybody in our company every year on FCPA, which is fine. I don't make the laws, but I do live by them. And as an American, we have to live by it. So it really is. It's that hard, and it's that simple.
Wow. So we're all listening to this, right? Because, one of the narratives, people say, we want trade, not aid. Right? Right? That's it. So if we really want trade, we're listening to the experts here, and they've told us what it takes, right? And one of the stories, I try to use analogies to kind of help people see what I'm trying to communicate. I say, if you're in an African market, or you're going to the market to buy fish, I'm the buyer. And I see there are 5, fish sellers, and I go to the first one, and their fish stinks. What do? I move on. And the next one doesn't treat me well. What do? I move on. And the next one feels, I don't need your money. What do I do? That's the way the world works. And that's what I'm also hearing you say. Capital flows in if you get it right. So we all have work to do. We have to go back. We have to take this. We have to hear this, and it's really strong. I love, because where else would you go where people are this open and direct? Where else would you go? But we have to stay committed, and this is the real work we have to do. There's no way around it. Oh, wow. Okay.
Scott, my question's for you. One of the things that you said that I found intriguing was that you wanted to pay the coffee growers as much as possible. When I think of international trade and about companies from the United States and Europe going abroad, that's not a strategy that seems to be the norm. The focus is, even if you look at offshoring today, is to move from India to a lower cost country so we can get the greatest margin out of the people doing the work for the corporation that's receiving the efforts of their labor. What made you create a strategy of trying to pay the coffee growers as much as possible from West Rock Coffee versus a standard corporate strategy that we see executed by most of the large corporations in the world?
Sure. Well, I'm not here to throw any large corporation under the bus, and here's why. Because I used to run one, and I actually know the trade-offs they have to make. What we're talking about, and frankly, the trade-offs they have to make are unfathomable in the modern world. And I think, frankly, for the most part, the vast majority get it right most of the time. Here's the issue, though. When you're talking about small plot farmers, we're not talking about someone who's going to work in a factory for $8 versus $7 or $6 versus $10, or in a call center for $12 versus $14, right? That's just, those are, that's the finishing touch. We're talking about people, whether or not at the, and you laid out the numbers better than I could. You're talking about people on the margin who are trying to keep their children alive. Now, I'm not a public company, but, and therefore, I am not paid by shareholders to maximize the profit. We always maximize profit within the bounds of putting our own head on the pillow at night and having no regrets. That was the basic rule. How do we drive the most return, and everybody gets to go home at night, put their own head on the pillow and say, I was asked to do only what was logical, fair, and reasonable today. I feel good about it. So we apply that test. But look, the public markets wouldn't have put up with what my wife put up with for 9 years. There's no way on earth. They just said, let's roll it all in. Don't make a profit. Take nothing out. Go without pay. Just roll it. Keep pushing it. Why? Because rubies are everywhere. I don't expect a corporation to live to that, nor do I think it would be a fair comparison, frankly. Unless they're buying from smallholder farmers. I wasn't the first guy to get there and see that model. And at that point, I'm going to stop. But if you want to talk later.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to Toyin for making this happen, and to all of you just sitting out there. I guess Ronnie, Scott, and Dale, you guys have done something that, I don't know, the average person would really find it hard to do. But sitting in this room, I believe there's so many people that want to do something about this, but don't know how to do it or where to start. But I would say that beyond the conversations, you guys open, and maybe Toyin can also lead us to develop maybe like a mentoring platform where some of your knowledge, you can begin to mentor a few of, people that are interested. You can put whatever criteria together to filter, because I know your time is valuable as well. But I'm just thinking, how do we make some of these conversations more tangible in the other countries or in the other arena where people already work around the room? Thank you.
Dale, that's a question for you.
Our answer to people who ask us those kind of questions is, you need to get on an airplane and you need to fly to Africa. And you need to go meet people, and you need to see the needs that are obvious and available. And God will tell you what you need to be sticking your finger in and what you need to be trying to fix. And it could be, it could be making loans to small entrepreneurs. It could be bringing health care. It could be bringing schools. I mean, Africa hasn't run out of needs, but you have to go see them, and you won't know exactly what you're supposed to do until you go and see it, and somebody touches your heart and says, you got enough to invest in that, whether it's your time, your, whatever it is, but you have to see it. You have to know it. And, I'm not a real big believer in structures or big organizations and stuff. I just believe get on a plane, go meet people, go see the problems, and do what you're called to do. You've been given more than most people who have ever, if you live in America, you have more than almost any other human beings that have ever lived on this planet, regardless of what economic level you're at. Let me tell you, go to Africa. God will call you to pull some time, some money, some resources out and address an issue.
Okay.
My name is Dennis. I'm actually from Rwanda, and I feel less Rwandan hearing all the panel being passionate about Rwanda. I feel more informed and probably challenged to be more passionate about my country. I had the opportunity to come to this country indirectly benefiting from British Rwanda, so I'm really grateful for what you did, Dale. I'm also good friends with people working at the feed mill in Rwanda, so grateful for that as well. My question is about the role of the diaspora in engaging in trade with Africa. Should I move back to Rwanda, or is there value in me staying here and adding value in some way? What role do you see the diaspora playing in accelerating the trade with Africa?
I need you to go be the coffee buyer. pick a retail brand, go be the coffee buyer.
My answer, Dennis, is get on a plane and go back and get a job and start a business. And, what you have been given, the experience that you have had here in the United States you have a competitive advantage to deliver something valuable there. And they need your talent and they need your life more than they need your money. Okay? Now, you have to figure out the timing of that. You have to figure out how you're going to work on there. I'll help you find a job. I'll help you partner with you. But the reality is, get in the game.
Wow. Somebody should tweet that. Get in the game.
I was going to say, you want to run a hatchery? You want to run a seed production business? You want to run a farm services and agriculture extension business? Seed distribution business? We can think of several. So
run a washing station.
Call Katie.
Okay, we have a question right here. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. He has the mic.
Thank you very much. Mr. Polydor Tangeli from DRC.
Wow.
What I can say now is that, according to my country, we have to learn more about Rwanda to raise up our country. So thank you, Toyin. Thank you to the panel. Once back home, I will share all of that to our ecosystem. But I'm a little bit confused comparing the Chinese data, according to the World Bank person.
Albert.
When I compare, I'm a little bit confused. And in my country, I realized that Chinese don't use those 3 values. What's your reaction?
We are Americans operating under FCPA. That's my reaction, and they are whoever they are operating under whatever they're operating under. Now, long term, now you got to play the long game. Which one is going to produce a society and a sustainable economy that you want long term? I can tell you the easy short term answer, always. But the long term one, the one that lifted my grandparents out of poverty, that allowed my father to reach maturity, was where people had invested under the 3 aspects that we talked about and built businesses and created trade. and you know what? And other people do what they do.
One more question?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second question is about bridge to Rwanda. We need it in Congo because we are promoting youth entrepreneurship, and we have a good program named High School Startup Day. You know, in the past time, we went to school to get diploma and seek job, but there is no job. That means we have to create job. So we are promoting entrepreneurship skills, but if we match our program with your program, that can allow people to make change in Congo. So I sent you an invitation to come in Congo and to figure out how we can implement your program in Congo. Thank you.
Dennis loved that. Back at you.
I actually, honestly, like, I really feel there's something there because Tangeli flew in from Congo, was it last night? He's on the ground, and what they try to do is drive entrepreneurship. They're trying everything they can with all they've got. If all you can do is some type of template, and with your, even if it's some type of, if you have a board, you know, like a board of director, just putting him on the board, you know, gives you access to his knowledge. So that's a trick, right?
I don't have to be on a board to give you access to my knowledge.
But you don't have to go. So here's the thing. One of the things we do is we want everything quickly. What they've all talked about is years of work, okay? And if you're building relationship, you have to be in it. So maybe the first step is not him physically coming. Maybe the first step is just engaging him in conversation and helping him understand what you're trying to do. I bet 15 minutes with him before you leave, he might drop some nuggets, right, that you can go back and implement, and then stay connected, email him, call him. You know, you never know. Right? Okay.
Right.
By the way, my name is William from the DRC, like Tangeli. I have two words I kept in mind. One is the passion I feel in you guys in terms of what you're doing, and really hats off. The second one is I feel really sustainability in what you're doing on the ground, and I think that is something Africa needed at this point in time. And I have only one really short question. You're doing great job on the continent, actually. And how do you make sure you still away from politics? Because, you know, the continent is just crazy in terms of politics, regional influence between countries and this and that, doing your business as well. How do you manage that aspect? I think it's one of your biggest challenge on the ground. How do you do that? Thank you.
I'll give you an example. So I was in country several years ago, and another global coffee trader called and wanted to have dinner with me while they knew I was in country, wanted to have dinner. I said, sure. We sell some to them. I said, sure, glad to have dinner. So we sit down, and they said, well, we would like to open a business here in Rwanda. I said, great. They said, no, but we're going to own washing stations, and we're going to compete with you. I go, I already knew that from the first thing you said. And he go, well, now how do you feel about it? I said, we're in a loop. Great. And they said, well, we fear that we might be in a position where if you didn't like that, it wouldn't go good for us. I said, good question. Here's the truth. I'm perfectly capable of wearing this is my best advice to the government if they ask me the question. I can play that, and I promise you, I commit to you 100%, I will play that straight down the middle every time. I will never harm you. I will go out of my way to help you if I ever get the chance. And then I'm going to turn my hat around. I'm going to kick your butt tomorrow. Right? And we're going to have, sorry, I'll do the best I can. We're going to compete, you know, we're going to compete ruthlessly but fairly in the marketplace because the people benefit when that's true. And I will always play an honor. They are now the biggest thorn in my side in Rwanda, And it's for all the right reasons, because they're very aggressive, paying up for quality coffee. And who wins? Who wins? The farmer won. Ruby won. I'm good with it.
Yeah. So, in starting businesses, and we've just poured a ton of assets into Tanzania. Big breeder farm up in the foothills of Kilimanjaro, and we're building a hatchery, a huge modern new hatchery down in Dar es Salaam. You know, you're not going to do any of that without talking to the development board of those countries about, you know, you're going to negotiate VAT taxes on, you know, the stuff you've got to import because it's not produced and manufactured there. So you're not going to avoid working with the government, in my experience, in any of those countries. A lot of the governments own and regulate land use, those sorts of things. But there's a difference between dealing with the government and getting involved in politics, in politicking, right? So, you know, I just mentioned, I talked to the Minister of Agriculture in Rwanda. It was important for us to know her, and it's, by the way, just 2 months ago, met the new minister, or the current Minister of Agriculture. It's important for you to know those in the government that you're, you know, of the country that you're operating in, but using that relationship for political or economic gain is off the table. But you know, the Minister of Agriculture needs to know that there's somebody in her country that wants to build a hatchery, that wants to, you know, lease land to you know, perhaps start a seed production business, those sorts of things. And they can frankly facilitate some of that happening. You know, fair lease rates, at least get you in a conversation with the landowners, whatever the case may be. But in my opinion, economic development, talk to any Chamber of Commerce member, talk to anybody, you know, in economic development in any area, that's a lot different than what I would call playing politics and seeking favors. I think you need good relationships. But I also think that for your business to stand on its own 2 feet over time, you know, you got to think about a system where if everybody's subsidized, ultimately somebody's going to get picked to be the winner. That's not a place I want to invest a whole lot of money. Make sense? Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so just following on from that real quick, and then I'll ask my actual question. And it's the question about relationships. I mean, you all mentioned the need to build deep relationships with the business community. I think that's very hard for governments to do, especially the bigger governments in Africa. The major reason being they spend most of their time trying to develop relationships with other governments and not individuals. It's easier for, you know, smaller countries that is very top-down, like Rwanda, to do than it is for some of the more complex countries. But the other question I had, and I was trying to calibrate the point you've made about corruption. Clearly, it's a huge tax on business. It's a drag on everything. The regulatory environment, you need to sort that out. But how do you calibrate it? How do you know how much corruption? Because, and I say that because, and then you see where I'm leading shortly, which is that a lot of the countries that get the most US investment are actually countries that run to some extent or the other on corruption, right? Like China, Indonesia, Malaysia, Brazil, a lot of these countries are. And the reason I ask this is, how do you mobilize, how do you actually start to mobilize serious US capital into Africa? Because the Europeans somehow, despite their own anti-corruption laws, are more active in Africa. I found out recently that there's one US bank that is operating in Africa that has a license, one, and that's Citibank. You know, it's more than, it might be a bit more than corruption.
I'd love to take one quick swing at that. So the ultimate outcome of trust in an economic sense is what? Credit, right? The willingness to send the money back and trust that you send the money somewhere and trust that out of your goodwill and your capabilities, you will send it back to me with interest. right? Credit is the last thing to develop. So when we went into Rwanda, we not only had to buy the mill, refit the mill. I was only 25% of the way through. We had to provide all the working capital. Now, we'd done a $27 billion LBO before we sold it to Verizon. I knew every banker in America, and I went to them. No, 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 no thank you. Well, I got one no thank you. No, go away, forget it. There was no credit available from the U.S. to any part of our business in East Africa. So then we had to go do friends and family, we had to show up with our own working capital. All right, why is this important? U.S. banks are, in terms of regulatory oversight, U.S. banks are highly regulated. Let's agree that they're properly, perfectly regulated. They are highly regulated. And there is no room for a foot fault. There is no room for an infraction. So I had one of the 3 largest banks in America say to me, you're a money maker. Last time we backed you, we made money. We want to back you. We're not sure how, but we're going to have to do a check on your farmers. I said, okay. What do you want to do? They said, we need their names. I said, what do you mean? He said, we need their names and we need their numbers. I said, there's 75,000 of them. And they said, okay. For what? And they said, we have to run it against the terrorist checklist. Oh, no. And I said, well, let me know if you find anything. She didn't really look like one to me, but I don't know. They may have all sorts of different shapes and forms. So that kind of level, it's a picture. It's an anecdote to show you just how highly scrutinized they are. And there's nobody coming under any pretense that they don't feel like they can go 100% down the checklist we've talked about. So China may come. European banks may have a different set of rules, but U.S. banking and FCPA, there is no wiggle room. And frankly, the world's in a better place long term when we all comply with it, but I don't actually harbor that as an expectation in this age.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I'm a professor of law at the law school here, and it's refreshing that people are talking about the rule of law and corruption, because that's what we've been talking about forever, and people don't listen. And so I would say keep on the message, because you're absolutely right that without the rule of law and the regulatory environment, you can't do anything. So I just want to say thank you for that. And I had 2 questions, really. One is that according to the last report from McKinsey & Company, China has about 10,000 businesses in Africa now, or at least 10,000 Chinese businesses in Africa. And this has all happened in the space of 20 years. And China is moving in at exactly the same time the US is pulling out. So my question to you is, from a policy environment, and I'm talking from Washington, from the US, what changes do you see might be necessary from that bigger environment? Is there any change that is needed? Because I don't know that AGOA is enough, and Africa is not looking for aid, but it looks to me that there might be need for other mechanisms at the country-to-country level in a way that the Chinese have done. And again, this is not to say let's copy the Chinese, I get that, but what can the US learn from the Chinese? What are they doing right? Of course, there are many things that are doing wrong, maybe, but what are they doing right? That's really one question. And a related question, it's wonderful that you are Christians, but there are many businesses that are going into Africa that are not headed by Christian leaders. Africa has a history of colonization and exploitation. What can you say about business ethics, corporate social responsibility? What can you share with other businesses? Because the experience of Africa with businesses has been always exploitative. Is there anything at a business-to-business level that you're doing to change the culture of business in Africa, to make businesses more enabling and to focus on sustainable development rather than exploitation? Thank you.
Wow. Before you answer that, so tomorrow morning, the first panel, we actually have representatives of the U.S. government in the room. There's an entire panel, USTDA, Department of Commerce, because what I asked them to do, because I did my research, I said, come and share with the audience what are the policies and what do you do and how can they partner. So that first question might be addressed tomorrow, I hope. But then the second one.
So if you let me wiggle my nose and make anything true about the United States government for 5 seconds, I would put the United States government in the position of providing credit to businesses that have a U.S. origin, doing business around the world in an efficient, timely, low regulatory, low bureaucratic, low form filling out, low general principle amount way of. The U.S. government could seed entrepreneurs that are doing business around the world in a well underwritten credit, properly underwritten credit facility. But you talk about you have sailed into the bureaucratic storm. That period. That's all I got on that. In Rwanda, in coffee, one of the ways we're trying to deal with what is exploitative and what is good business is, and this is why I actually brought up Claude Shannon earlier, because coffee is going to meet the cell phone. And what we are trying to do is build the first, I don't mean cute, like I've got, a bag and I brought it to a little roaster and I don't mean a cute one-off. I mean at a commercial, hundreds and thousands of containers of coffee scale. We're trying to be the first company in the world to provide a digital blockchain-based certification of ownership all throughout. And here's why. It's very complicated, and we're working hard to solve it. We've had people programming the various places along the value chain, but the American consumer wants this. And tell me if this fits you. They want to see something that's traceable, which means they want to see each block, each time it's handed off, right? From the farmer to the washing station, to the dry mill, to the exporter, to the importer, to the roaster, to the retail. And they want to know, was this good? Is this chain of ownership good? That's called traceability. Second thing they want transparency. They really want to know at which price and at what markup and at which cost were incurred all the way down the chain. The third thing they want is sustainability, that it's sustainable from an agronomy perspective, and it's also sustainable from a living wage perspective for the farmer. The only way that can be done, really, is through some form of digitization of that custody chain. And if we can do that, then people in the U.S. can have confidence they're buying traceable, transparent, sustainable. Here's the problem. The coffee industry isn't set up for that to be a win. Each one has a walled garden application that they're trying to run where the roaster is the beneficiary of all of the activity on the ground. And we're trying to flip all that, run an open interface where the farmer is the beneficiary of all that information all the way up. And if we do it, we'll change the coffee industry, which is really what we're trying to do. And I don't know what else to do on a day-to-day basis with them, frankly, in that vein.
What do you do? Hey, look, our stuff's pretty simple. I mean, we buy corn and soybeans, and we blend them and make feed and sell to farmers and, do all that on the up and up. We raise chickens and sell eggs, and we help small farmers grow 100 chickens sustainably and sell them. I can tell you with sustainability in your name, that better be a focus. One of the things that we talk about and getting to profitability can be an issue is, I believe the only sustainable form of agriculture is commerce, right? And so helping these farmers create their own business where, we may be supplying them chicks and feed, but it's their business. It's after 3 years, it'll be their coop. And then they can decide whether they want to add on to it and buy more chickens or those sorts of things. To me, that's the creating a commercial enterprise at whatever scale. I mean, 84,000 francs that's what, $100 every 60 days. That doesn't sound like much, right? But it's huge for Scene. And so helping her create her own little enterprise that she can then build off of, for us, that's sustainable. Regardless of the motivation behind it all, she and her 4 kids and her husband are getting help and will create a business that otherwise it just wouldn't have happened.
Okay, yeah, so one more question.
I want real quick to follow up Dennis's question. Dennis, you have a software engineering degree, right? So he's a software engineer for Walmart. And we saw that behind oil, the greatest GDP is agriculture throughout the continent. So we got agriculture, education, and yet with this big problem Donnie's presented, how do we convince the software engineer to move back to the continent? Scott, you just touched on it a little bit, and develop it when agriculture is really not that sexy. I have a poultry science degree. It's never been glamorous. It will never be glamorous. How do we motivate and encourage people to get into commodities and agriculture and developing that country, or that continent? Sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to say a little bit about that. So I have a degree, I grew a career in technology. And we're going to be talking about a little bit of technology too. But what I am seeing in the technology space is that technology is an enabler, okay? There is no Walmart without a POS, point of sale system. We have to start treating technology innovation on the continent as an enabler for agriculture, so agri-tech, right? So just think about what I'm doing now. I'm actually applying, in a way, my programming skills here because I know how people think and how things connect together and how you can bring people together. You don't have to, there are skills you're learning, but you can apply it in agriculture. I think that's what I'm trying to say is technology is an enabler and we need to solve for the farmers. We're trying to solve from farm to shelf, supply chain, logistics. We can innovate around that, but we need technologies to focus on that. Sometimes I just feel like we're programming, but we need to start applying that knowledge. Just like you say, blockchain. Come on. Akin's in the room. I call him Mr. Blockchain. You guys should talk.
Where is he?
Akin, where are you? Okay. Yeah, he was just on Wall Street talking about blockchain, right? So, yeah. But that's innovation in agriculture. So that's what I would have to say is technology is an enabler.
This may be a cop-out answer. I don't know. I've got a degree in animal science from Tennessee, frankly, because I wasn't smart enough to get in vet school. I tried.
All the little puppies.
Yeah. But, I don't know. I rarely used my degree in agriculture after about the first 6-7 years of my career because I went into supply chain management and it was all about transportation, warehousing, logistics, and JDA and all the decision support software and all that. Then I ended up being involved in a big SAP project. I was a chief information officer of Tyson for about 18 months. That's scary. He was on the board, learned that, and jumped off. No, but the point is God directed my path and He pointed me to my need, and what I learned was to learn. I learned how to learn, and using some of those, these skills, then you take that and you add to that toolkit, and then you take that and you add to that toolkit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and before long, you've learned how to lead people effectively. You've learned the importance of the balance sheet and how important cash is and those sorts of things. And you look back and, 36 years later, I wouldn't trade a thing, but I only used a degree that I worked hard for that animal science degree. Had to, because Dad made it perfectly clear I wasn't coming home. And so, but I used that degree technically for probably less than 6 years.
Wow. Any last comments for the crew here?
I'd go back to the question you asked about China and about ethics and things like that. I believe that North America has developed this incredible economy because of a sense of values and ethics that, the Hollywood perception of business people as greedy and unethical and distrustworthy, that's the total fallacy, is that we couldn't do business together if we didn't trust people. It's one of the things Scott and I learned from Jack Stevens here, and he was partners with Sam and Don and all those people, is that if you don't trust these people, nothing else matters. And that's the way, that is America's contribution to the world, is that ethical, honest, fair business is the best way to do business. And if Americans and North Americans will come to Africa and do business, it's one of the few things we have that we can share, okay? And our goal is for a generation. I really do believe it's hard to teach old dogs new tricks, okay? And one reason for the Scholars Program is that we get them when they're puppies, and we grow them up in an environment where they learn how to do business on a global scale. And one thing I will tell you about the Chinese is they don't care about values or ethics.
No.
And the second, they will never train an African to run their business.
They will not. Exactly.
And so countries and it will have to decide. There's nothing wrong. Chinese can deliver a lot of products that are well worth it. But you got to decide in the long run, who do you want to align your economy and your society with?
Yeah. I also say that, trust me, that China is not solving agriculture for Africa. Right? So if we want to get it right by 2050, that population growth and growing our own farm, we've got to partner. Yeah. Wow, would you please help me thank this group? Oh my goodness. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.